in 1989, I was getting sick of LA. My mentors were retiring or dying, and there were strikes constantly, and so I was over it and looking to get out. And I had some family in Florida. My parents had a retirement situation that they'd set up for themselves in Palm Beach County. And Newsweek magazine in January of 1989 had an article about the 10 most livable cities in America, and Orlando was on that list. And I'd been to Disney World once, and that was the sum total of my experience here. But Universal was getting ready to open, and Disney had just opened, and I took a red eye on a Thursday night, had interviews on Friday. People said, oh my gosh, when can you get here? When can you get here? We need you, we need you, we need you. On Saturday, I bought a house. And on Sunday, I went home and put my home on the market. And by May, I was here, and there were no jobs for me. But that's how I got here. Fortunately, I did end up working, but that's how I ended up here.
I'll go. Why I stay in Florida? Well, when I moved here, actually April 20th will be 17 years from my first day at Ideas. And what keeps me here is partially laziness, but also I'm a true believer in, the grass isn't greener on the other side. I mean, my job at Ideas has allowed me to grow from literally the tape vault guy to the chief operating officer. And my boss is smart enough to know that I get bored easily and gives me new responsibilities and new tasks about every 6 months to a year just to keep me fresh. But I stay here because it's a great place to raise my family. I do miss Chicago greatly, not as so much in the winter, but I miss my family, I miss my friends, I miss the summers in Chicago. But I believe in what we as a state are doing to grow. I look at the culture and the arts here in Florida, and yeah, it doesn't compare to Chicago or New York or LA, but you can see the path that it's taking, and I'm proud of that, and I take great pride in doing a tiny little sliver of helping that. But I stay here because I see the future and I see the potential, and hopefully we can achieve that potential. And it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I've been here 17 years, and I was excited when we could do pay at the pump in Florida. So I mean, it certainly doesn't happen overnight. It takes time and it takes hard work, and it's not going to be easy. But it makes it that much better once we achieve what we want to be.
Ditto.
I would say that the film programs in this state are, they are fantastic, and there's the open door and the collaboration. Ralph Clementi being one, great that we've just lost, but what a legacy and example he has set for us. But Full Sail, Valencia and UCF right here, FSU, film schools down south. I think it's really important for those of you who are filmmakers, if you can expand, even going into some other markets, if you get an opportunity to go to LA and work, make relationships, and making Florida your base, it really helps to be able to have that collaboration across the country as well, and to bring those relationships forward in bringing them to Florida to work on projects with you. It really is about relationships always. And so I would say Florida, especially now with Bloodline, some of the shows we've had, but Bloodline more than anything with the new media of Netflix, is a game changer. I think there are a lot of people who are realizing locations, crew, passion, qualified people are here. People are willing to step up and take meetings very easily and quickly. You can get those in other markets, but they may take time, and again, building relationships. And when you have your film commissioners who are so willing to support, do what they can, be a phone call away, when your crew is, right there for you, what do you need, how can we pull this together? Florida is, it's very unique in that way. We have great locations, beautiful sunsets, hard summers, and so you have to prepare for that market downside. As you're working, the hurricanes, you have to work with that. But again, you have such great people who are giving you advice and guidance and available to you to kind of see how to navigate all of that. So I wouldn't say, like going to LA is if you are wanting to make feature films, wanting to produce television shows, I think it's important to have, or New York, to have those relationships, but definitely bring them back here, and I think they'll be really excited to work here.
Kind of piggyback off what you said. I think Florida, and Central Florida specifically, has a really unique and advantageous sort of kind of specter in the market where, like, we're big enough that we have all the resources and all the crew that you would want, but we're still kind of small enough that you can reach out directly to people at the Film Commission and colleges and people like that, and you can have a more direct line to the people who are involved in actually making it happen. But like, we have all the resources here and over Florida that you can get anywhere else, but you really have more of a personal, like, I wouldn't say small, but a more direct contact with people who are going to help you make things happen. And because it's sort of a smaller market, you know those people personally. You're on panels with them, you see them at events. So I think that's really advantageous to Central Florida, but Florida in general. And I mean, I've shot all over the United States, Chicago, New York, LA, lots of small towns. I'll take the Pepsi challenge on a Florida crew. I mean, really, like, I will stack up our people against anybody else. So it's a great place to be, and I'll probably stay forever.
Yeah, I think in the context of today's world, where virtually everything is virtual, where we can live anywhere we want, that Florida's lifestyle is probably much better, except for South Florida, where the traffic mimics Atlanta and Los Angeles at times. But we don't know traffic in Orlando like they do out west and in places like Atlanta and New York. So there's a big lifestyle difference that really is appealing to me. I know, having moved here in the late 80s, I've seen a lot of change, but at the same time, I think it's still as friendly a place as it ever was, both in terms of crew and business environments and that sort of thing. What we lack is some infrastructure that we need to build over time, and the time is now. Ultimately, we could use some agency presence or some more talent representation to the extent that we have a great talent base here, and I just don't think it gets recognized enough as that's true of both in front of the camera and behind the camera. But there's also a big issue with regard to finance. If you look at the model of what makes successful productions, and you say, okay, we got great intellectual property, we've got great stories here. There's no doubt. There's so much great writing talent, directorial talent. I have no question that we have material that competes with the rest of the world. We have, now that distribution is through places like Netflix, the .com has opened up the world to virtually everybody. I mean, Henry was saying it earlier that there's really no barrier to entry in terms of getting your content distributed. There is a marketing issue, and that relates to money. And it all ultimately comes back to money. We have great talent, great crews, all of that. So what's missing is ultimately finance. And for any of you guys like Anthony, the MBA, who's an intern at the Film Commission, figuring out how hedge funds work and bringing that money to Florida so that it becomes a sensible investment rather than just an angel investment is probably the biggest hurdle we face. And if we can figure that out, then and there are a lot of great minds, financial minds, all over the state, and paired with a legislature that finally sees the light, or re-sees the light, I should say, with regard to the incentive, then perhaps those things will all meld. I know recently a friend of mine was up in Atlanta scouting, and he was trying to find a crew, and he was like 4th or 5th on the list, and there simply wasn't crew for him, even though they have this robust film incentive program. That's not something I've ever experienced here. Whenever I went looking for crew or cast members, we found people who were well suited for the job.
I would say, from my perspective, doing a lot more sort of like the stuff that we've done is a lot more independent sort of projects, and what I found consistently being in Florida, moving to Florida and being dropped into the Valencia program, which was like just being dumped into the deep end immediately. So coming from South Florida, learning at film school, there was just, you were in a vacuum of learning. You were just doing your own little projects and stuff. And you came here and were just like dumped into like a real film project. It was terrifying. But at the same time, it's just like you have to learn immediately how to swim and then what you're doing. And there's just constant work going on here. So it's like you gotta find a position, you gotta find how you work in that position, and you gotta find immediate allies, which is the best part of Valencia, I think, was going there and finding a community of people who are just passionate about film and want to make stuff, and regardless of what the end result is, they just want, a lot of people just want to make things. So that was the best thing that happened to me moving to Orlando and starting film is just the circle of friends that I've made and the insanely talented people that I get to work with and who care and support the projects that you're doing, and sticking with those people and helping those people when they need help. And so we've worked, at least more recently, in more independent sort of projects and people donating time and like finding people who can do that. And so when work is steady, people need to take those jobs, and they can't always be on your project or whatever. So it's like, but the amount of support and just donated time and effort that people put in here and that just care about projects is just insane. And that's why I can't even imagine leaving anytime soon. I would just be like lost without the people that I've at least found to be supportive and are amazing and important.
I guess I'll jump in really quickly, bring it back to Melanie's #WhyOrlando. The EDC's new slogan, I guess, is "You don't know the half of it." That applies not only to their business development side, but it really also applies to the film side. A lot of people do associate Central Florida simply with the theme parks and palm trees. And a lot of people don't know palm trees are not native to Central Florida. They actually don't grow naturally. If you see one, it was planted there. So a lot of people come here to film for Anywhere USA. And I'm speaking the 4-county region that my office covers, which is Lake, Osceola, Orange, and Seminole counties. Within our region, we have duplicated 6 of the 7 continents. I guess you could go Antarctica if you went to SeaWorld's penguin exhibit or something like that. But you can really film almost any project here. I know there was one Vietnam in the swamps. There's Texas with the farmland, especially out in Lake County. I mean, really, you dream it and we have it, essentially. So that also is a big point that we in the film office try and get across to people, is that we're not necessarily all tourism based. We do have anything you could want in terms of crew, in terms of locations, and people really don't know the half of it, so.
I'll definitely say that, jumping on that point, like when we were making our short film, like one of the key points for it was that I really wanted it to look northern and not have a Florida feel specifically. More of a vague nothing feel, it's just a more northern feel. And I was kind of terrified of what we'd be able to find. We immediately, just like within an hour or two, found these amazing houses past downtown, just like a colonial sort of look. And the same things that we were shooting a series of music videos, and I kind of wanted to have a vague nowhere kind of look, and we just found a million locations. It just could be anywhere. There's not a Florida vibe to it. I mean, you can get a Florida vibe really easily, but you can get an anywhere vibe just as easily. We're shooting up in caverns in Mariana. It's like crazy underground caverns. It's like, I didn't even know it existed in Florida. You just like, the more you search and find things, we had wheat fields, like just anything that could translate to be Anywhere USA, which is here. It's just surprising to me. The more I've lived here forever, and I only know South Florida, so I know a lot of palm trees and beaches. And then just searching out and doing location scouting, it's insane the amount of variety that you can find. Yeah, and I was actually lucky enough to produce that EDC You Don't Know the Half of the campaign. And for weeks, we just looked around, you know, the 4 counties that Lindsay mentioned. And I found so many crazy things and saw so many things that I never even knew were right in our own backyard. Like Randall Knives is this like boutique company off like OBT. There's like a little sign on OBT that says like Randall Knives. You would never go back there. Then you go back and it's like 20 artisans like handcrafting every bit of a knife. And there's a 5-year waiting period. Like just weird stuff like that. Like we got to go inside Boeing and JetBlue and like all these absolutely amazing, unique locations and things that exist in Central Florida that I never knew existed, and I've lived here 20 years almost. So beyond like the locations and stuff, like there are just interesting, unique things in the backyard that you would never know existed that could be utilized for film and television.
About crew, oftentimes directors come here kicking and screaming because of things that the producers find important. You know, they want to shoot it somewhere more glamorous, and by the end of the project, universally, they're totally blown away by what they found here, by the quality of the crew. I mean, and they verbalize this to us. You know, they'll tell us, I didn't want to be here, but I'm so glad we came here, because there's amongst the crew, it's not, you know, especially when you're dealing with union projects, in LA especially, everything, you know, this is my job, that is your job. You know, if the cable is in my way, I'm not going to move it, I'm going to wait until the proper utility person comes to move the cable. I mean, the rules are really strict in LA and New York, and there's a much more collaborative vibe on sets in Florida. You know, not that anybody's usurping anybody else's job, but it's more collaborative. And because of that, there's a much nicer feel, I think, on sets, because I've worked on sets all over the place with people from everywhere. And so people really, directors, producers really appreciate the attitudes of the crews. And we all know that when, you know, producers are nice, crew people will bend over backwards to do everything. And for instance, From the Earth to the Moon shot here years ago at HBO on the Cape about the Apollo program. And it was produced by Tom Hanks and kept a lot of people working for close to a year, I think. And when Tom Hanks picked up his Emmy for Best Miniseries, one of the things he said in his speech was, "Thank you to the best crew I've ever worked with." So, you know, I think that says a lot about us.
You know, we've talked about how being a part of this industry is somewhat like riding a roller coaster. I'm curious, how do you guys maintain a positive attitude, and, you know, how do you handle that a lot of people feel like, I mean, they're shocked that there's the talent here, they're such a diverse